ಎಲ್ಲರಿಗೂ ನಮಸ್ಕಾರ. ಇವತ್ತಿನ ಈ ಒಂದು ಪತ್ರಿಕಾಗೋಷ್ಠಿಯಲ್ಲಿ ಭಾರತೀಯ ಜನತಾ ಪಾರ್ಟಿಯ ಕರ್ನಾಟಕ ರಾಜ್ಯ ಲೈಟ್ ಏನು ಇವತ್ತಿನ ಈ ಪತ್ರಿಕಾಗೋಷ್ಠಿಯಲ್ಲಿ ಭಾರತೀಯ ಜನತಾ ಪಾರ್ಟಿಯ ರಾಜ್ಯ ಅಧ್ಯಕ್ಷರು ನಮ್ಮನ್ನೆಲ್ಲ ಸದಾ ಪ್ರೇರಣೆಯನ್ನು ಮಾಡ್ತಾ ಇರ್ತಕ್ಕಂಥ ಶ್ರೀಯುತ ನಳಿನ್ಕುಮಾರ್ ಅವರಿದ್ದಾರೆ. ಅವ್ರಿಗೂ ಸ್ವಾಗತವನ್ನ ಬಯಸ್ತೇನೆ. ಹಾಗೆ ಕರ್ನಾಟಕದ ನಿಕಟಪೂರ್ವ ಮುಖ್ಯಮಂತ್ರಿಗಳು, ಸದಾ ಕರ್ನಾಟಕದ ಗೋಸ್ಕರ ಅನೇಕ ಕೆಲಸಗಳನ್ನ ಮಾಡಿದಂತ ಮಾನ್ಯ ಬಸವರಾಜ ಬೊಮ್ಮಾಯಿ ಅವ್ರಿಗೂ ಕೂಡ ತಮ್ಮೆಲ್ಲರ ಪರವಾಗಿ ಸ್ವಾಗತವನ್ನ ಬಯಸ್ತಾ ಇದ್ದೀನಿ. ಹಾಗೆ ಇವತ್ತಿನ ಈ ಪತ್ರಿಕಾಗೋಷ್ಠಿಯಲ್ಲಿ ಕೇಂದ್ರದ ಸಂಸ್ಕೃತಿ ಮಂತ್ರಿ, ಭಾರತೀಯ ಜನತಾ ಪಾರ್ಟಿಯ ರಾಷ್ಟ್ರೀಯ ವಕ್ತಾರು ಆಗಿ ಕೆಲಸವನ್ನ ನಿರ್ವಹಿಸಿದಂತ ಮೀನಾಕ್ಷಿ ಲೇಖಿ ಅವರು ಬಂದಿದ್ದಾರೆ. ಅವ್ರಿಗೂ ತಮ್ಮೆಲ್ಲರ ಪರವಾಗಿ ಸ್ವಾಗತವನ್ನ ಬಯಸ್ತಾನೆ. ಹಾಗೆ ಈ ಒಂದು ಪತ್ರಿಕಾಗೋಷ್ಠಿಯಲ್ಲಿ ಕರ್ನಾಟಕ ರಾಜ್ಯದ ಭಾರತೀಯ ಜನತಾ ಪಾರ್ಟಿಯ ಹಿರಿಯ ನಾಯಕರುಗಳು, ಸನ್ಮಾನ್ಯ ಅಶ್ವಥ್ ನಾರಾಯಣರವರು, ಸನ್ಮಾನ್ಯ ಕೋಟಾ ಶ್ರೀನಿವಾಸ ಪೂಜಾರಿ ಅವರು, ಸನ್ಮಾನ್ಯ ಶ್ರೀ ಭೈರತಿ ಬಸವರಾಜ್ ಅವರು, ಹಾಗೆ ವಿಧಾನ ಪರಿಷತ್ತಿನ ಸದಸ್ಯರಾದಂತ ಛಲವಾದಿ ನಾರಾಯಣ ಸ್ವಾಮಿ ಅವರು ಕೂಡ ಇದ್ದಾರೆ. ಅವ್ರಿಗೂ ಸ್ವಾಗತವನ್ನ ಬಯಸ್ತಾ ಈ ಒಂದು ಪತ್ರಿಕಾಗೋಷ್ಠಿಯಲ್ಲಿ ಪಾಲ್ಗೊಂಡಂತ ತಮ್ಮೆಲ್ಲರಿಗೂ ಸ್ವಾಗತವನ್ನ ಬಯಸ್ತಾ ಇವಾಗಿನ ಈ ಪತ್ರಿಕಾಗೋಷ್ಠಿಯನ್ನ ಮಾನ್ಯ ಬಸವರಾಜ ಬೊಮ್ಮಾಯಿ ಅವರು ನಡೆಸಿಕೊಡೋರಿದ್ದಾರೆ.
ಆತ್ಮೀಯ ಮಾಧ್ಯಮದ ಸ್ನೇಹಿತರೆ, ಇಂದು ವಿಶೇಷವಾಗಿರುವಂತಹ ಪತ್ರಿಕಾಗೋಷ್ಠಿಗೆ ಬಂದಿರುವಂತ ಭಾರತೀಯ ಜನತಾ ಪಕ್ಷದ ಹಿರಿಯ ನಾಯಕರು, ಸಂಸತ್ ಸದಸ್ಯರು ಆದಂತ ಶ್ರೀಮತಿ ಮೀನಾಕ್ಷಿ ಲೇಖಿ ಅವರೇ, ರಾಜ್ಯದ ಭಾರತೀಯ ಜನತಾ ಪಕ್ಷದ ಅಧ್ಯಕ್ಷರು, ಸಂಸತ್ ಸದಸ್ಯರು, ಆತ್ಮೀಯರಂತ nalinkumarkateel ಅವರೇ, ಹಾಗೂ ನಮ್ಮ ಇಂದಿನ ಸಚಿವ ಸಂಪುಟದ ಸೌದೆಗಳಾಗಿದ್ದಂಥ ಶಾಸಕರಾದಂಥ ಬಸವರಾಜ್ ಭೈರತಿ ಅವರೇ, ಶ್ರೀನಿವಾಸ ಪೂಜಾರಿ ಅವರೇ, ಅಶ್ವಥ್ ನಾರಾಯಣ ಅವರೇ, ಛಲವಾದಿ ಲಕ್ಷ್ಮೀನಾರಾಯಣ ಅವರೇ, ರವಿಕುಮಾರ್ ಅವರೇ, ಎಲ್ಲ ಆತ್ಮೀಯರೇ, ಇವತ್ತಿನ ಈ ಪತ್ರಿಕಾಗೋಷ್ಠಿಯ ಪ್ರಮುಖ ವಿಚಾರವನ್ನ ನಮ್ಮ ಹಿರಿಯ ನಾಯಕರಾದಂಥ ಶ್ರೀಮತಿ ಮೀನಾಕ್ಷಿ ಲೇಖಿ ಅವರು ತಗೊಳ್ತಾರೆ. ನಾನು ಪ್ರಾರಂಭಿಕವಾಗಿ ಒಂದೆರಡು ಮಾತುಗಳನ್ನು ಮಾತನಾಡಕ್ಕೆ ಇಚ್ಛೆಪಡ್ತೀನಿ. ತಮಗೆಲ್ಲ ಗೊತ್ತಿದ್ದಂತೆ ನಮ್ಮ ನೆಚ್ಚಿನ ನಾಯಕರು, ಭಾರತದ ನೆಚ್ಚಿನ ಪ್ರಧಾನಮಂತ್ರಿಗಳು, ವಿಶ್ವಮಾನ್ಯ ನಾಯಕರಾದಂಥ ಸನ್ಮಾನ್ಯ ನರೇಂದ್ರ ಮೋದಿಜಿಯವರ ನೇತೃತ್ವದ ಸರ್ಕಾರ 9 ವರ್ಷ ಪೂರ್ಣ ಆಗ್ತಾ ಇದೆ. 9 ವರ್ಷ ರಾಷ್ಟ್ರದಲ್ಲಿ ಬಹಳಷ್ಟು ಬೆಳವಣಿಗೆ ಆಗಿದೆ, ಬದಲಾವಣೆ ಆಗಿದೆ. ರಾಷ್ಟ್ರ ಬಹಳ ಕ್ಷೇತ್ರಗಳಲ್ಲಿ ಮುನ್ನಡೆದಿದೆ. ಎಲ್ಲಕ್ಕಿಂತ ಹೆಚ್ಚಾಗಿ ಪ್ರತಿಯೊಬ್ಬ ನಾಗರಿಕನ ಬದುಕಿನಲ್ಲಿ ಕಳೆದ 9 ವರ್ಷದ ನೀತಿ ಮತ್ತು ಕಾರ್ಯಕ್ರಮಗಳ ಫಲವಾಗಿ ಪ್ರತಿಯೊಬ್ಬ ನಾಗರಿಕನ ಬದುಕಿನಲ್ಲಿ ಬಹಳ ದೊಡ್ಡ ಆರ್ಥಿಕ, ಶೈಕ್ಷಣಿಕ, ಸಾಮಾಜಿಕ ಬದಲಾವಣೆ ಮತ್ತು ಉನ್ನತೀಕರಣ ಆಗಿರುವಂಥದ್ದು ನಾವು ನೋಡ್ತೇವೆ. ಇವತ್ತು ಸನ್ಮಾನ್ಯ ನರೇಂದ್ರ ಮೋದಿಜಿಯವರು ಅಧಿಕಾರವನ್ನು ತೆಗೆದುಕೊಂಡಂತಹ ಸಂದರ್ಭದಲ್ಲಿ ಭಾರತದ ಆರ್ಥಿಕ ಪ್ರಗತಿ ಕುಂಠಿತವಾಗಿತ್ತು. ಸ್ಪಷ್ಟವಾದಂಥ ನೀತಿ ಇರಲಿಲ್ಲ. ಪ್ಯಾರಲಿಸಿಸ್ ಆಫ್ ಪಾಲಿಸಿ ಆಗಿತ್ತು. ಒಂದಾದ್ಮೇಲೆ ಒಂದು ಸ್ಕ್ಯಾಂಡಲ್ಗಳು ಎಲ್ಲ ಕ್ಷೇತ್ರಗಳಲ್ಲಿ ಇದ್ದದ್ದನ್ನು ನಾವು ನೋಡ್ತಾ ಇದ್ದೀರಿ. ಭಾರತದ ವಿಶ್ವಾಸಾರ್ಹತೆ ಬಹಳ ತೆಳಮಟ್ಟಕ್ಕೆ ಕುಸಿತಿತ್ತು. ಆಂತರಿಕವಾಗಿ ಮತ್ತು ವಿಶ್ವದಲ್ಲಿಯೇ ಬಹಳ ವಿಶ್ವಾಸಾರ್ಹತೆ ಕುಸಿತದ್ದನ್ನು ನಾವು ನೋಡ್ತೇವೆ. ಇಂಥ ಒಂದು ಲಿಗಸಿಯನ್ನ ಪಡ್ಕೊಂಡಂತ ನರೇಂದ್ರ ಮೋದಿಜಿಯವರು ಬಹಳ ದೊಡ್ಡ ಸವಾಲುಗಳನ್ನು ಎದುರಿಸುವಂತಹ ಪರಿಸ್ಥಿತಿ ಇದ್ದಂತಹ ಸಂದರ್ಭದಲ್ಲಿ ಅವರು ತಮ್ಮ ಮುಖ್ಯಮಂತ್ರಿಯಾಗಿ, ಗುಜರಾತಿನ ಮುಖ್ಯಮಂತ್ರಿ ಆಗಿರುವಂತಹ ಆಡಳಿತದ ಅನುಭವ ಮತ್ತು ರಾಷ್ಟ್ರವನ್ನ ಸಂಪೂರ್ಣವಾಗಿ ಬಲ್ಲವರಾಗಿದ್ದರು. ಹೀಗಾಗಿ ಎರಡು ಥರದ ಬದಲಾವಣೆಗಳನ್ನು ಅವ್ರು ಮಾಡಿದರು. ಒಂದು, ಮೂಲಭೂತವಾಗಿ ಫಂಡಮೆಂಟಲ್ ಚೇಂಜ್ ಏನಾಗಬೇಕು ಅದಕ್ಕೆ ಬಹಳಷ್ಟು ಒತ್ತನ್ನು ಕೊಟ್ಟರು. ಆ ಮೂಲಭೂತ ಬದಲಾವಣೆಯಿಂದ ಭಾರತದ ಆರ್ಥಿಕ, ಸಾಮಾಜಿಕ, ಶೈಕ್ಷಣಿಕವನ್ನು ಸುರಕ್ಷಿತಗೊಳಿಸುವಂಥದ್ದು ಮತ್ತು ಭಾರತದ ಬಾಹ್ಯ ಮತ್ತು ಆಂತರಿಕವಾಗಿ ಸುರಕ್ಷತೆಗೊಳಿಸಿರುವಂಥದ್ದು. ನಮ್ಗೆ ನೆನಪಿದೆ, UPA ಸರ್ಕಾರದ ಅವಧಿಯಲ್ಲಿರುವಂತಹ ಟೆರರಿಸಮ್, ಬಾಂಬ್ ಬ್ಲಾಸ್ಟ್ಗಳು, ನಮ್ಮ ಕಚೇರಿ ಎದುರಿಗೆ ಬಾಂಬ್ ಬ್ಲಾಸ್ಟ್ ಆಗಿರುವಂಥದ್ದು ಇಲ್ಲೇ ಉದಾಹರಣೆ ಇದೆ. ಎಲ್ಲ ಕಡೆ ಟೆರರಿಸಮ್ ಬಹಳ ದೊಡ್ಡ ಆಕ್ಟಿವಿಟಿ ಇತ್ತು. ಹೊರ ದೇಶದಿಂದ ಅವ್ರಿಗೆಲ್ಲ ರೀತಿಯ ಸಹಾಯ ಸಿಗ್ತಾ ಇತ್ತು. ಅದನ್ನು ಸಂಪೂರ್ಣವಾಗಿ ನಿಯಂತ್ರಣವನ್ನು ಮಾಡಿರುವಂಥದ್ದು, ರಾಷ್ಟ್ರದಲ್ಲಿ ಒಂದು ಶಾಂತಿ ನೆಲೆಸುವಂಥದ್ದು, ರಾಷ್ಟ್ರದ ಸುರಕ್ಷತೆ, ಅಖಂಡತೆ, ಏಕತೆಯನ್ನು ಕಾಪಾಡಿರುವಂಥದ್ದು. ಒಂದು ಕಡೆ ಸುರಕ್ಷತೆಯನ್ನು ಮಾಡಿದರೆ ಆರ್ಟಿಕಲ್ 370 ಮಾಡಿ ರಾಷ್ಟ್ರದ ಏಕತೆ, ಅಖಂಡತೆಯನ್ನು ಇವತ್ತು ಬಹಳ ವರ್ಷದಿಂದ ಅದರ ಬೇಡಿಕೆ ಇತ್ತು. ಅದು ಏಕತೆ, ಅಖಂಡತೆಯನ್ನು ಮಾಡೋ ಸಲುವಾಗಿ ಕಾಶ್ಮೀರನ ಜೋಡಿಸಿರುವಂಥದ್ದು. ಇದರ ಜೊತೆಗೆ ಎರಡು ಪ್ರಮುಖ ಕೆಲಸವನ್ನು ಅವ್ರು ಮಾಡಿರುವಂಥದ್ದು ನಾವೆಲ್ಲರೂ ಕೂಡ ಗಮನಿಸ್ತೇವೆ. ಒಂದನೇದ್ದು GSTಯನ್ನು ಅವರು ತಂದಿರುವಂಥದ್ದು. GST ಬಹಳ ವರ್ಷದಿಂದ ಚರ್ಚೆಯಲ್ಲಿತ್ತು. ಈ ವಿಚಾರದಲ್ಲಿ ಎಲ್ಲ ಪಕ್ಷಗಳನ್ನು ಕಾನ್ಷಿಯಸ್ನೆಸ್ ತಂದು GST ಜಾರಿ ಮಾಡಿದ್ರು. ಇವತ್ತು ಕರ್ನಾಟಕ ನಂಬರ್ 2 ಇದೆ GST ಕಲೆಕ್ಷನ್ನಲ್ಲಿ. ಆ ವ್ಯವಸ್ಥೆ ಬಂದ ಮೇಲೆ ನಮ್ಮ ಕರ್ನಾಟಕದ ಆದಾಯ ಕೂಡ ಇವತ್ತು ಹೆಚ್ಚಾಗಿರುವಂಥದ್ದು. ಎರಡನೇದು, ರಾಜ್ಯಗಳಿಗೆ GSTಯಲ್ಲಿ ಮೊದಲನೇ 5 ವರ್ಷ 14% ಗ್ಯಾರಂಟಿಡ್ ಗ್ರೋತ್ ಅದನ್ನು ಲೆಕ್ಕ ಹಾಕಿ ನಮ್ಮ GST ಕಾಂಪನ್ಸೇಷನ್ ಕೊಡುವಂಥದ್ದು. ಬಹಳಷ್ಟು ರಾಜ್ಯಗಳು 7%, 8%, 9% ಟ್ಯಾಕ್ಸ್ ಗ್ರೋತ್ ಇದ್ದಂಥ ರಾಜ್ಯಗಳು ಇವತ್ತು 14% ಗ್ಯಾರಂಟಿ ಗ್ರೋತ್ ಆಗಿದೆ. ಹೀಗೆ ರಾಷ್ಟ್ರದಲ್ಲಿ ಆರ್ಥಿಕತೆಯನ್ನು ಬೆಳವಣಿಗೆಯ ಜೊತೆಗೆ ಆರ್ಥಿಕವಾಗಿ ರಾಜ್ಯಗಳಿಗೆ ದೊಡ್ಡ ಪ್ರಮಾಣದಲ್ಲಿ ಹಂಚಿಕೆ ಮಾಡೋದರಲ್ಲೂ ಕೂಡ ಅದು ಅನುಕೂಲ ಆಗಿದೆ. ಎರಡನೇದು, ನೀತಿ ಆಯೋಗವನ್ನು ಅವರು ತಂದಿದ್ದಾರೆ. 40% ಡೆವಲ್ಯೂಷನ್ ಅನ್ನು ರಾಜ್ಯಕ್ಕೆ ಇವತ್ತು ಕೊಟ್ಟಿದ್ದಾರೆ. ಕಳೆದ 7 ವರ್ಷದಿಂದ ಪ್ರತಿ ವರ್ಷ ನಮಗೆ 8 ರಿಂದ 10 ಸಾವಿರ ಕೋಟಿ ಅತಿ ಹೆಚ್ಚು ಡೆವಲ್ಯೂಷನ್ ಇವತ್ತು ನಮ್ಮ ಕರ್ನಾಟಕ ರಾಜ್ಯಕ್ಕೆ ಇವತ್ತು ಬರ್ತಾ ಇದೆ. ಅದಾದಮೇಲೆ ನ್ಯೂ ಎಜುಕೇಷನ್ ಪಾಲಿಸಿ. ಆಧುನಿಕ ಜಗತ್ತಿಗೆ, ಆಧುನಿಕ ಒಂದು ವ್ಯವಸ್ಥೆಯಲ್ಲಿ ನಮ್ಮ ಮಕ್ಕಳು ಸ್ಪರ್ಧಾತ್ಮಕವಾಗಿ ಬಹಳಷ್ಟು ಸಶಕ್ತ ಆಗಬೇಕು, ತಯಾರಾಗಬೇಕು, ಹೊಸ ಸವಾಲುಗಳನ್ನು ಎದುರಿಸೋದಕ್ಕೆ. ಅದಕ್ಕೆ ಹೊಸ ಶಿಕ್ಷಣ ಬಹಳ ಅವಶ್ಯಕತೆ ಇದೆ ಅಂತ ಬಹಳ ವರ್ಷ ಚರ್ಚೆ ಆಗ್ತಾ ಇತ್ತು. ಆದರೆ ಮಾಡುವಂಥ ಕೆಲಸ ಯಾರೂ ಮಾಡಿರಲಿಲ್ಲ. ನರೇಂದ್ರ ಮೋದಿಜಿಯವರು ಹೊಸ ಶಿಕ್ಷಣ ನೀತಿಯನ್ನು ತಂದರು. ಹೊಸ ಶಿಕ್ಷಣ ನೀತಿಯನ್ನು ಅಡಾಪ್ಟ್ ಮಾಡಿದ್ದು ಫಸ್ಟ್ ಕರ್ನಾಟಕ. ಕರ್ನಾಟಕ ಇಸ್ ದ ಫಸ್ಟ್ ಸ್ಟೇಟ್ ಟು ಅಡಾಪ್ಟ್ ದ ನ್ಯೂ ಎಜುಕೇಷನ್ ಪಾಲಿಸಿ. ಆ್ಯಂಡ್ ಆಲ್ರೆಡಿ ಈಗ ನಾವು ಅದನ್ನು ಅಡಾಪ್ಟ್ ಮಾಡಿ ಈಗ 2ನೇ ವರ್ಷಕ್ಕೆ ಕಾಲಿಟ್ಟಿದ್ದೇವೆ. ಮೊದಲನೇ ಸೆಮಿಸ್ಟರ್ ಮತ್ತು ಮೊದಲನೇ ವರ್ಷದ ವಿದ್ಯಾರ್ಥಿಗಳಿಗಾಗಲೇ ಪಾಸ್ ಆಗಿದ್ದಾರೆ. ಅದರಲ್ಲಿರುವಂಥ ಇಂಟರ್ ಸೆಕ್ಟೋರಿಯಲ್ ಫ್ಲೆಕ್ಸಿಬಿಲಿಟಿ, ಚಾಯ್ಸ್ ಮತ್ತು ಬೇರೆ ಬೇರೆ ಹಂತದಲ್ಲಿ ಅವರಿಗೆ ಸರ್ಟಿಫಿಕೇಶನ್ ಕೊಡುವಂಥದ್ದು ಹಲವಾರು ಹೊಸ ವಿಚಾರಗಳು ಅದರಲ್ಲಿ ಬಂದಿದೆ. ಅದನ್ನು ನಮ್ಮ ಕರ್ನಾಟಕ ಇವತ್ತು ಮಾಡಿಕೊಂಡಿದೆ. ಇದರ ಜೊತೆಗೆ ಸಾಮಾಜಿಕವಾಗಿ ಎಕನಾಮಿಕ್ ವೀಕರ್ ಸೆಕ್ಷನ್ಗೆ ಇವತ್ತು 10% ರಿಸರ್ವೇಷನ್ ಅನ್ನು ಕೊಟ್ಟಿರುವಂಥದ್ದು, ಸುಪ್ರೀಂ ಕೋರ್ಟ್ ಅದನ್ನು ಎತ್ತಿ ಹಿಡಿದಿರುವಂಥದ್ದು, ಮತ್ತು OBC ಕಮಿಷನ್ಗೆ ಒಂದು ಕಾನ್ಸ್ಟಿಟ್ಯೂಷನಲ್ ವ್ಯಾಲಿಡಿಟಿಯನ್ನು ಕೊಟ್ಟಿರುವಂಥದ್ದು. ಹೀಗೆ ಆರ್ಥಿಕವಾಗಿ, ಶೈಕ್ಷಣಿಕವಾಗಿ, ಸಾಮಾಜಿಕವಾಗಿ ಮೂಲಭೂತ ಬದಲಾವಣೆಗಳನ್ನು ನರೇಂದ್ರ ಮೋದಿಜಿಯವರು ತಂದಿದ್ದಾರೆ. ಕರ್ನಾಟಕ ಮಟ್ಟಕ್ಕೆ ಹೇಳಬೇಕಾದ್ರೆ ಬಹಳ ದೊಡ್ಡ ಕೊಡುಗೆ ಅವರ ಯೋಜನೆಗಳಿಂದ ಬಂದಿದೆ. ಇನ್ಫ್ರಾಸ್ಟ್ರಕ್ಚರಲ್ಲಿ ತಮಗೆಲ್ಲ ಗೊತ್ತಿದೆ, ಅತಿ ಹೆಚ್ಚು ನ್ಯಾಷನಲ್ ಹೈವೇ ಕಳೆದ 73-74 ವರ್ಷದಲ್ಲಿ ಏನು ನ್ಯಾಷನಲ್ ಹೈವೇ ಆಗಿತ್ತು ಸುಮಾರು 4,500 ಕಿಲೋಮೀಟರ್. ಆದರೆ ಕಳೆದ 9 ವರ್ಷದಲ್ಲಿ ಇವತ್ತು 5,000 ಕಿಲೋಮೀಟರ್ ಮಂಜೂರಾತಿಯಾಗಿ ಅದರಲ್ಲಿ 30,000 ಕೋಟಿ ರೂಪಾಯಿ ಬಿಡುಗಡೆಯಾಗಿ ಇವತ್ತು ಬಹುತೇಕವಾಗಿ ಎಲ್ಲ ಕಾಮಗಾರಿಗಳು ಕೂಡ ಮುಗಿಯುವ ಹಂತದಲ್ಲಿದ್ದಾವೆ. ಅದೇ ರೀತಿ ನಮ್ಮ ಮೆಟ್ರೋಗೆ ಬಹಳ ದೊಡ್ಡ ಬೆಂಗಳೂರು ಮೆಟ್ರೋಗೆ ಸಹಾಯವನ್ನು ಮಾಡಿದ್ದಾರೆ. ಸಬರ್ಬನ್ ರೈಲ್ಗೆ 15,000 ಕೋಟಿ ರೂಪಾಯಿಯ ಯೋಜನೆಯನ್ನು ಕೊಟ್ಟಿದ್ದಾರೆ. ಮತ್ತು ಮೊನ್ನೆ ಮುಖ್ಯಮಂತ್ರಿಗಳು ಫೈನಾನ್ಸ್ ಕಮಿಷನ್ 5,000 ಕೋಟಿ ರೂಪಾಯಿ ಬರಬೇಕಾಗಿತ್ತು, ಬಂದಿಲ್ಲ, ಕೇಳಿಲ್ಲ ಅಂತ ಹೇಳ್ತಾರೆ. ಫೈನಾನ್ಸ್ ಕಮಿಷನ್ ಇಂಟೀರಿಯಂ ರಿಪೋರ್ಟಲ್ಲಿ ಇತ್ತು, ಹೊರತಾಗಿ ಫೈನಲ್ ರಿಪೋರ್ಟಲ್ಲಿ ಇರಲಿಲ್ಲ. ಆ ಇಂಟೀರಿಯಂ ರಿಪೋರ್ಟಲ್ಲಿ ಇದ್ದದ್ದನ್ನು ಕೂಡ ನಾವು ಹಲವಾರು ಬಾರಿ ಅದರ ಪ್ರಯತ್ನಗಳನ್ನು ಮಾಡಿದ್ದೇವೆ. ಆ ಪ್ರಯತ್ನದ ಫಲವಾಗಿಯೇ ನಮ್ಗೆ ಸಬರ್ಬನ್ಗೆ ಅವ್ರು ಫೈನಲ್ ರಿಪೋರ್ಟಲ್ಲಿ ಹೇಳಿದರು, ವಿ ವಿಲ್ ಗಿವ್ ಟು ದಿ ಇನ್ಫ್ರಾಸ್ಟ್ರಕ್ಚರ್ ಆಫ್ ದಿ ಬೆಂಗಳೂರು ಅಂತ. ಅದಕ್ಕಾಗಿ ಬೆಂಗಳೂರು ಸಬರ್ಬನ್ಗೆ ವಿಶೇಷವಾಗಿ ಅನುದಾನವನ್ನು ಕೊಟ್ಟಿದ್ದಾರೆ. ಆ ಮಾತನ್ನು ಸಿದ್ದರಾಮಯ್ಯ ಅವರು ಹೇಳಲ್ಲ. ಅದೇ ರೀತಿ 5,000 ಕೋಟಿ ಅಪ್ಪರ್ ಭದ್ರಾಗೆ ಕೊಟ್ಟಿದ್ದಾರೆ. ವಿಶೇಷವಾಗಿರುವಂಥ ಅನುದಾನ 5,130 ಕೋಟಿ ರೂಪಾಯಿ ಅಪ್ಪರ್ ಭದ್ರಾ ಯೋಜನೆಗೆ ಕೇಂದ್ರ ಸರ್ಕಾರ ಇವತ್ತು ಬಜೆಟಲ್ಲಿ ತೆಗೆದಿಟ್ಟಿದೆ. ಮತ್ತು ಈ ವರ್ಷ ರೈಲ್ವೆ ಬಜೆಟಲ್ಲಿ 7,500 ಕೋಟಿ ರೂಪಾಯಿ ರೈಲ್ವೆ ಬಜೆಟಲ್ಲಿ ಇವತ್ತು ಕರ್ನಾಟಕಕ್ಕೆ ಒದಗಿಸಿದೆ. 5 ವರ್ಷದಲ್ಲಿ ಏನು ಒದಗಿಸ್ತಾ ಇತ್ತು ರೈಲ್ವೆ ಬಜೆಟಲ್ಲಿ ಪ್ರತಿ ವರ್ಷ, ಅದನ್ನು ಒಂದೇ ವರ್ಷದಲ್ಲಿ 7,500 ಕೋಟಿ ರೂಪಾಯಿ ಇವತ್ತು ಕೇಂದ್ರ ಸರ್ಕಾರ ಇದೇ ವರ್ಷ ನಮಗೆ ಒದಗಿಸಿದ್ದಾರೆ. ಇದಲ್ಲದೆ ನಮಗೆ ಬೆಂಗಳೂರು ಮೈಸೂರು ಹೈವೇ ವಿಶೇಷವಾಗಿ ಕೊಟ್ಟಿದ್ದಾರೆ. ಮತ್ತು ನಮಗೆ 4 ಮೆಡಿಕಲ್ ಕಾಲೇಜನ್ನು ಕೊಟ್ಟಿದ್ದಾರೆ. 4 ಮೆಡಿಕಲ್ ಕಾಲೇಜನ್ನು ಕರ್ನಾಟಕಕ್ಕೆ ಕೊಟ್ಟಿದ್ದಾರೆ. ಒಂದು IITಯನ್ನು ಕೊಟ್ಟಿದ್ದಾರೆ. ಮತ್ತು ಮಂಗಳೂರು ಕಾರವಾರ ಪೋರ್ಟ್ ಎಕ್ಸ್ಪಾನ್ಷನ್ಗೆ ದುಡ್ಡು ಕೊಟ್ಟಿದ್ದಾರೆ. 2 ಹೊಸ ಪೋರ್ಟ್ಗಳಿಗೆ ಇವತ್ತು ಅನುಮತಿಯನ್ನು ಕೊಟ್ಟಿದ್ದಾರೆ ಸಾಗರಮಾಲಾ ಯೋಜನೆ ಅಡಿಯಲ್ಲಿ. ಸುಮಾರು 1,230 ಕೋಟಿ ರೂಪಾಯಿ ಅಷ್ಟು ಅನುದಾನ ಕೋಸ್ಟಲ್ ಏರಿಯಾ ಡೆವಲಪ್ಮೆಂಟ್ಗೆ ಕೊಟ್ಟಿದ್ದಾರೆ. ಕೋಸ್ಟಲ್ ಏರಿಯಾದಲ್ಲಿ ಟೂರಿಸಂ ಅನುಕೂಲ ಆಗಲು ನಮ್ಮ CRZ ಪ್ಲಾನ್ 30 ವರ್ಷದ ಬೇಡಿಕೆ ಇತ್ತು. CRZ ಪ್ಲಾನ್ಗೆ ಇವತ್ತು ಅವರು ಅನುಮತಿಯನ್ನ ಇವತ್ತು ಅವರು ಕೊಟ್ಟಿದ್ದಾರೆ. ಮತ್ತು ಎಂಪ್ಲಾಯ್ಮೆಂಟ್ ದೃಷ್ಟಿಯಿಂದ ಗುಲ್ಬರ್ಗಾದಲ್ಲಿ ಒಂದು ಜವಳಿ ಪಾರ್ಕ್ ಅನ್ನು ಕೊಟ್ಟಿದ್ದಾರೆ. 1 ಲಕ್ಷ ಜನರಿಗೆ ಎಂಪ್ಲಾಯ್ಮೆಂಟ್ ಸಿಗುವಂತ ಜವಳಿ ಪಾರ್ಕ್ ಅನ್ನು ಅನುದಾನದೊಂದಿಗೆ ಅವರು ಕೊಟ್ಟಿದ್ದಾರೆ. ಹೀಗೆ ಹೇಳ್ತಾ ಹೋದರೆ ಬೇಕಾದಷ್ಟು ಅನುಕೂಲಗಳು ಕೇಂದ್ರದಿಂದ ಆಗಿದೆ. ಇದನ್ನ ರಾಜ್ಯ ಸದುಪಯೋಗ ಮಾಡಿಕೊಂಡು ಜನರಿಗೆ ಮುಟ್ಟಿಸುವಂತ ಕೆಲಸ ರಾಜ್ಯ ಸರ್ಕಾರ ಮಾಡಬೇಕು. ಇದರಲ್ಲಿ ರಾಜಕಾರಣ ಮಾಡುವಂಥದ್ದು ರಾಜ್ಯದ ಜನತೆಗೆ ನುಕ್ಸಾನ್ ಆಗ್ತದೆ ಹೊರತಾಗಿ. ಆದ್ದರಿಂದ ಇವತ್ತು ಈ ಎಲ್ಲ ಯೋಜನೆಗಳನ್ನು 9 ವರ್ಷದಲ್ಲಿ ನರೇಂದ್ರ ಮೋದಿಜಿಯವರು ನಮಗೆ ಕೊಟ್ಟಿರುವಂತಹದ್ದು ನಾವೆಲ್ಲರೂ ಕೂಡ ಕರ್ನಾಟಕದ ಜನ ಆಭಾರಿಯಾಗಿದ್ದೇವೆ ಅನ್ನುವಂಥ ಮಾತನ್ನ ನಾನು ಹೇಳಕ್ಕೆ ಇಚ್ಛೆಪಡ್ತೇನೆ. ರೈತ ಸನ್ಮಾನ ಯೋಜನೆ 16,000 ಕೋಟಿ ರೂಪಾಯಿ ಕಳೆದ 4 ವರ್ಷದಲ್ಲಿ ಸುಮಾರು 54 ಲಕ್ಷ ಜನ ರೈತರಿಗೆ ಇವತ್ತು ನಮ್ಮ ಕರ್ನಾಟಕದಲ್ಲಿ ಬಂದಿದೆ. 54 ಲಕ್ಷ ಜನ ರೈತರಿಗೆ ನೇರವಾಗಿ DBTಯಲ್ಲಿ ಬಂದಿದೆ. ಅದರ ಜೊತೆಗೆ 1.5 ಕೋಟಿ ಆಯುಷ್ಮಾನ್ ಕಾರ್ಡ್ ಇವತ್ತು ಕರ್ನಾಟಕಕ್ಕೆ ಇವತ್ತು ಬಂದಿರೋದು ನಾವೆಲ್ಲ ನೋಡ್ತಾ ಇದ್ದೇವೆ. ಹೇಳ್ತಾ ಹೋದ್ರೆ ಬಹಳ ದೊಡ್ಡ ಪಟ್ಟಿ ಇದೆ. ಇವತ್ತು ಪ್ರಧಾನ ಮಂತ್ರಿ ಆವಾಸ್ ಯೋಜನೆ ಕೇವಲ ಒಂದು ಫಾರ್ಮಲ್ ಆಗಿ ಒಂದು ಡಿಜಿಟಲ್ ಪ್ಲಾಟ್ಫಾರ್ಮ್ ಬದಲಾವಣೆ ಮಾಡಕ್ಕೆ ಒಪ್ಪದೆ ಸುಮಾರು 17 ಲಕ್ಷ ಮನೆಗಳ ಮಂಜೂರಾತಿ ಹಿಂದಿನ ಸರ್ಕಾರ ಕಾಲದಲ್ಲಿ ತಡೆ ಹಿಡಿಯಲಾಗಿತ್ತು. ನಾವು ಬಂದ ಮೇಲೆ ಈಗ ಸುಮಾರು 17 ಲಕ್ಷ ಪ್ರಧಾನ ಮಂತ್ರಿ ಆವಾಸ್ ಯೋಜನೆಗೆ ಮಂಜೂರಾತಿಯನ್ನು ಕೊಟ್ಟಿದ್ದಾರೆ. ಬರುವಂತಹ ದಿನಗಳಲ್ಲಿ ಅವುಗಳಿಗೆ ಇವತ್ತು ನಾವು ಕೇಂದ್ರ ರಾಜ್ಯ ಸರ್ಕಾರ ಅನುದಾನವನ್ನು ಒದಗಿಸಬೇಕಾಗ್ತದೆ. ಅಂದಾಗ ಮಾತ್ರ ಅದು ಬಡ ಜನರಿಗೆ ಮುಟ್ಟಿಸಕ್ಕೆ ಸಾಧ್ಯ ಇದೆ. ಇವತ್ತು 9 ವರ್ಷದ ಬದಲಾವಣೆ ಬಹಳ ಪ್ರಮುಖವಾಗಿತ್ತು ಅಂತ ನನ್ನ ಭಾವನೆ. ನರೇಂದ್ರ ಮೋದಿಜಿ ಅವರು ಪ್ರಧಾನಮಂತ್ರಿ ಆಗಿದ್ದರಿಂದ ಇವತ್ತು ವಿಶ್ವದಲ್ಲಿ ಭಾರತಕ್ಕೆ ಮಾನ್ಯತೆ ಸಿಕ್ಕಿದೆ. ರಾಷ್ಟ್ರ ರಾಜ್ಯ ಸುರಕ್ಷಿತವಾಗಿದೆ. ಬಡವರ ಗರೀಬ್ ಕಲ್ಯಾಣ ಯೋಜನೆಗಳು ಪ್ರಾರಂಭ ಆಗಿದೆ. ಮುದ್ರಾ ಯೋಜನೆಯಲ್ಲಿ 60 ಲಕ್ಷ ಜನ ಯುವಕರಿಗೆ, ಕರ್ನಾಟಕದ ಯುವಕರಿಗೆ ಇವತ್ತು ಸಾಲ ಸೌಲಭ್ಯ ಸಿಕ್ಕಿದೆ. ಮುದ್ರಾ ಯೋಜನೆಯಲ್ಲಿ ಪ್ರಧಾನಮಂತ್ರಿ ಸ್ವನಿಧಿ ಯೋಜನೆಯಲ್ಲಿ 1.5 ಲಕ್ಷ ಜನ ಬೀದಿ ವ್ಯಾಪಾರಿಗಳಿಗೆ ಸಾಲ ಸೌಲಭ್ಯ ಸಿಕ್ಕಿದೆ. ಇದೆಲ್ಲ ಸಿಕ್ಕಿರುವಂಥದ್ದು ನಾನು ಹೇಳ್ತಿರುವಂಥದ್ದು. ಹೀಗೆ ಕಟ್ಟಕಡೆಯ ಮನುಷ್ಯ ಬಡವರಿನಿಂದ ಹಿಡಿದು ಇನ್ಫ್ರಾಸ್ಟ್ರಕ್ಚರ್ ಅಭಿವೃದ್ಧಿವರೆಗೂ ಇವತ್ತು ನಾವು ಎಲ್ಲವನ್ನೂ ಕೂಡ ಅಭಿವೃದ್ಧಿ ಆಗ್ತಿರುವಂಥದ್ದು ನಾವು ನೋಡ್ತೇವೆ. ಇನ್ನು ಕೆಲವು ಫಂಡಮೆಂಟಲ್ ಚೇಂಜಸ್ ಅಲ್ಲಿ ಇನ್ನೊಂದು ರೈತರಿಗೆ ಬಹಳ ಪ್ರಮುಖವಾಗಿರುವಂಥದ್ದು MSP ಹಳೆ ಮಾನದಂಡ ಬಹಳ ವರ್ಷದಿಂದ ಇತ್ತು. ಆ MSPನ ಸುಮಾರು 300 ಪಟ್ಟು ಹೆಚ್ಚನ್ನ ಮಾಡಿರುವಂಥದ್ದು ನರೇಂದ್ರ ಮೋದಿಜಿಯವರ ಸರ್ಕಾರ. ಇದರಿಂದ ರೈತರಿಗೆ ಕಷ್ಟದಲ್ಲಿ ಮಾರುವಂತ ಅವರ ದವಸ ಧಾನ್ಯಕ್ಕೆ ಬೆಂಬಲ ಬೆಲೆ ಅತಿ ಹೆಚ್ಚು ಇವತ್ತು ಸಿಗುವಂತ ಇವತ್ತು ಕೆಲಸಗಳಾಗಿದೆ. ಅದರ ಜೊತೆಗೆ ಫ್ಲಡ್ಸ್ ಅಲ್ಲಿ ಕೂಡ ಪರಿಹಾರ ಕೊಡುವಂತ ಮಾನದಂಡ ಬಹಳ ಹಳೇದಿತ್ತು. ಮನೆ ಬಿದ್ದರೆ 25,000 ಅತಿ ಹೆಚ್ಚು, ಅದನ್ನ 95,000ಕ್ಕೆ ಕೇಂದ್ರ ಸರ್ಕಾರ ಏರಿದೆ. ನಾವು 5 ಲಕ್ಷಕ್ಕೆ ಏರಿಸಿದ್ದೇವೆ. ಒಣ ಬೇಸಾಯಕ್ಕೆ ಕೇವಲ 2,000 ಇತ್ತು, ಅದನ್ನು 6,500 ಕೇಂದ್ರ ಸರ್ಕಾರ ಹೆಚ್ಚು ಮಾಡಿದೆ. ಹೀಗೆ ಫ್ಲಡ್ಸ್ ಆಗಲಿ, ಸಂಕಷ್ಟದಲ್ಲಿರುವಾಗ ಪರಿಹಾರ ಹೆಚ್ಚಾಗಿದೆ, ಬೆಂಬಲ ಬೆಲೆ ಹೆಚ್ಚಾಗಿದೆ, ಅಮೂಲ್ಯಕರವಾಗಿರುವಂತಹ ಅವಶ್ಯಕತೆ ಇರುವಂತಹ ಎಲ್ಲ ಬದಲಾವಣೆಗಳನ್ನು ತಂದಿದೆ. ರಾಷ್ಟ್ರವನ್ನ ಆರ್ಥಿಕವಾಗಿ ಸಬಲೀಕರಣ ಆಗಿದೆ. ಎಕನಾಮಿಕಲಿ 11th ಪೊಸಿಷನ್ ಇದೆ, 5th ಪೊಸಿಷನ್ ಬಂದಿದೆ. ಇವತ್ತು 5 ಟ್ರಿಲಿಯನ್ ಅಲ್ಲಿ ಕರ್ನಾಟಕ 1 ಟ್ರಿಲಿಯನ್ ಮಾಡೋದಕ್ಕೆ ಸಶಕ್ತವಾಗಿ ನಾವೆಲ್ಲವನ್ನು ಕೂಡ ಪ್ರಾರಂಭ ಮಾಡಿದ್ವಿ. ಹೀಗೆ ಇವತ್ತು ಭಾರತದ ಅಭಿವೃದ್ಧಿಗೆ, ಭಾರತದ ಆರ್ಥಿಕ ಸಾಮಾಜಿಕ ಪರಿವರ್ತನೆಗೆ ನರೇಂದ್ರ ಮೋದಿಜಿಯವರ ನಾಯಕತ್ವ, ಅವರ ಕ್ರಿಯಾಶೀಲತೆ, ಅವರ ನೀತಿ ಮತ್ತು ಅವರ ಬದ್ಧತೆ. ಇನ್ನೊಂದು ಅವರ ಒಂದು ಬಹಳ ಒಳ್ಳೆಯ ಗುಣ ಏನಂದ್ರೆ, ಅವ್ರು ಏನು ಪ್ರಾರಂಭ ಮಾಡಿದ್ರು ಅವರೇ ಅದನ್ನು ಉದ್ಘಾಟನೆ ಮಾಡಿರುವಂಥದ್ದು. ಹಲವಾರು ನಾರ್ತ್ ಈಸ್ಟಲ್ಲಿರುವಂಥ ಬ್ರಿಡ್ಜ್ಗಳಿರ್ಬೋದು, ಕಾಶ್ಮೀರದಲ್ಲಿರುವ ಟನಲ್ ಇರ್ಬೋದು, ನಮ್ಮ ಬೆಂಗಳೂರು ಮೈಸೂರು ಹೈವೇಯಿಂದ ಇರ್ಬೋದು, ಮತ್ತು ಫಾಸ್ಟ್ ಟ್ರೈನ್ ಆಗಿದೆಯಲ್ಲ ಅದು ವಂದೇ ಭಾರತ್ ರೈಲ್ ಇರ್ಬೋದು, ಹೆಲಿಕಾಪ್ಟರ್ ಫ್ಯಾಕ್ಟರಿ ಇರ್ಬೋದು, ಹಲವಾರು ಉದಾಹರಣೆಗಳನ್ನು ಕೊಡ್ಬೋದು. ಕೊನೆಯದಾಗಿ ಹೊಸ ಸಂಸತ್ ಏನಾಗಿದೆ ಅವರೇ ಪ್ರಾರಂಭ ಮಾಡಿ ಅವರೇ ಉದ್ಘಾಟನೆ ಮಾಡಿರುವಂಥದ್ದು. ಗತಿಶಕ್ತಿ ಅಂತ ಒಂದು ಯೋಜನೆಗಳನ್ನು ಹಾಕ್ಕೊಂಡು ಎಲ್ಲ ಮೆಗಾ ಪ್ರಾಜೆಕ್ಟ್ಗಳಿಗೆ ಸ್ಪೀಡನ್ನು ಕೊಡುವಂಥ ಕೆಲಸವನ್ನು ಮಾಡ ಒಬ್ಬ ದೂರದೃಷ್ಟಿ ಇರುವಂಥ ಒಬ್ಬ ವಿಷನರಿ ಸ್ಟೇಟ್ಸ್ಮನ್ ಮತ್ತು ಅತ್ಯಂತ ಕಟ್ಟುಬದ್ಧಾಗಿ ಕರ್ತವ್ಯ ನಿಷ್ಠೆಯಿಂದ ದೇಶವನ್ನು ಕಟ್ಟುವಂಥ ದೇಶ ಪ್ರೇಮಿ ನರೇಂದ್ರ ಮೋದಿಜಿಯವರ ನೇತೃತ್ವದಲ್ಲಿ 9 ವರ್ಷ ಮುಂದಿನ ಅಮೃತ ಕಾಲಕ್ಕೆ ಭದ್ರ ಅಡಿಪಾಯನ್ನು ಹಾಕಿದೆ. ಒಂದು ಸ್ಪ್ರಿಂಗ್ ಬೋರ್ಡ್ ಅನ್ನು ಕೊಟ್ಟಿದೆ, ಪ್ಲಾಟ್ಫಾರ್ಮ್ ಅನ್ನು ಕೊಟ್ಟಿದೆ. ಇದು ಈ 9 ವರ್ಷ ಭಾರತದ ಇತಿಹಾಸದಲ್ಲಿ ಅತ್ಯಂತ ನೆನಪಿಡುವಂಥ ಒಂದು ಸ್ಮರಣೆಯಲ್ಲಿ ನಿಜವಾಗಲೂ ಕೂಡ ಅಭಿವೃದ್ಧಿಯ ಕಥೆಯನ್ನು ಯಾರಾದರೂ ಬರೆದ್ರೆ ಈ 9 ವರ್ಷ ಅದ್ಭುತವಾದಂಥ ಒಂದು ಈ 9 ವರ್ಷದಲ್ಲಿ ಆಗಿರುವಂಥ ಬೆಳವಣಿಗೆಗೆ ಒಂದು ಮುನ್ನಡಿಯನ್ನು ಬರೆಯುವಂಥ ಕೆಲಸ ಆಗ್ತದೆ ಅನ್ನುವಂಥ ಮಾತನ್ನು ನಾನು ಹೇಳಕ್ಕೆ ಇಚ್ಛೆಪಡ್ತೇನೆ. ಅದನ್ನು ಅಮೃತ ಕಾಲದಲ್ಲಿ ಅವರೇನು ಆಶೆ ಇದೆ, ಭಾರತವನ್ನು ಶ್ರೇಷ್ಠವಾಗಿ ವಿಶ್ವದಲ್ಲಿ ಮಾಡಬೇಕನ್ನೋದಕ್ಕೆ ಈ 9 ವರ್ಷದ ಅವರ ಪರಿಶ್ರಮ ಆಗ್ತದೆ ಅನ್ನುವಂಥ ಮಾತನ್ನು ಹೇಳಿ, ಅಮೃತ ಕಾಲದೆಡೆಗೆ ಹೋಗೋದಕ್ಕೆ ಮೋದಿಜಿಯವರ ನಾಯಕತ್ವ ಮುಂದುವರಿಬೇಕು. ಇಡೀ ದೇಶದ ಹಂಬಲ ಇದೆ, ದೇಶದ ಜನರ ಹಂಬಲ ಇದೆ, ಅದು ಆಗ್ತದೆ ಅನ್ನುವಂಥ ವಿಶ್ವಾಸದೊಂದಿಗೆ ನನ್ನ ಮಾತನ್ನು ಮುಗಿಸ್ತೇನೆ.
ಇದು ಈ 9 ವರ್ಷಗಳ ಸೇವೆ, ಸುಶಾಸನ ಮತ್ತೆ ಬಡವರ ಕಲ್ಯಾಣದ ಬಗ್ಗೆ ಏನು ನಮ್ಮ ಪ್ರಗತಿ ಇದೆ ಅದನ್ನ ಒಂದು ಪಿಪಿಟಿ ರೂಪದಲ್ಲಿ ತೋರಿಸುತ್ತೆ. ಒಂದು ಓಕೆ, ಈಗ ಮೀನಾಕ್ಷಿ ಲೇಖಿ ಅವರು ತಮ್ಮನ್ನ ಕುರಿತು ಮಾತಾಡ್ತಾರೆ.
And connect that with my speaking. Let us sit. You go and sit with them. Sit with them. Ellaragu namaskara. My dear friends, I'm here after some time, and I was listening to what CM Saab was saying. I was reminded of the speech, the very first speech which the Prime Minister gave when he came to the Parliament for the very first time. He touched the podium, he bowed to the steps, he bowed to the Parliament at the steps of the Parliament, and then once he went in, he said in Hindi, मेरी सरकार, ये सरकार गरीबों को, किसानों को, वंचितों को समर्पित है, which means that this government is dedicated to the poor, the farmers and the marginalized. And the biggest marginalization that happens in the society is that of women. So automatically the women's welfare has been part of his program. So past 9 years have showcased what is good governance. It has showcased what is the kind of speed with which country can progress and work, and what true development entails. This is how on these 3 limbs I can discuss the developmental process. And I must say, in past 9 years, it's not been easy, and in English, as we say, it's been a Herculean task, and it's been a Herculean task to deal with corruption. It's been a Herculean task to deal with Jan Seva. It's been a Herculean task to deal with development of the marginalized. It's been quite a task. But we all know the word Herculean task. We all understand the depth and the width of the enormity of a problem the moment I say Herculean task. But if I was to say it was a Bhagirath Prayas, how many of you would understand? Bhagirath Prayatna, how many will understand? The fact is, no, I'm very happy everyone will. The fact is that across India, in our general matter of speech, we started using words like Herculean task. We stopped using words like Bhagirathi, Prayatna or Prayas. So it's what the point I'm trying to make is, the task was tough. We are on the right track. We've been delivered many promises. And this journey of 9 years has been a journey of delivery from promises. Not just open promises, but delivery from promises. And the civilizational change in value system. And which got depicted yesterday. Nobody knew that a thing like Sangol existed in our country. Nobody knew the civilizational power of this country. And the task of Mr. Modi has been to develop, to progress, to do everything and keeping the civilizational ethos and values of this country. And that's what he has been trying to do. And that was what my emphasis was, that Herculean task is something which is understood, but Bhagirathi Prayatna or Prayas is less spoken, is not talked about, because the elites who got into power post 1947, when India became independent, tried to deny that civilizational link to their own civilization from which they benefited. And the prayas on the part of Prime Minister has been to regenerate that feeling of pride in all of us about the civilizational ethos and values of this country. And that has been a Bhagirathi Prayatna or Prayas by itself. And I must say that when we talk about Jan Kalyan, if I can have the PPT. So they've already reached the vaccine. I must say that at the time of COVID or the pandemic, we got to see that so many systems collapsed, not only in India, but even amongst the more developed nations. A lot of countries, I would not like to name, but could not even dispose of their dead. Their dead bodies were kept in refrigerators for a very long time. But in India, which is not so rich, we had a very large population to deal with. Our infrastructures were weak, but instead of crumbling due to that weakness, he's one man who stood by his kartavya nishtha, by the deeds he did, and I'm sure all of us benefited by the Covaxin, Covishield, the vaccines made in India, and you can understand the impact of those vaccines, which have proved to be one of the best vaccines in the world. But when production had to happen, before that, when research was happening, I want to remind every one of you how these people from the opposition were trying to sell foreign products in this country. They had no confidence that Indian products could be as good or better, but they were insisting that import vaccines from other countries and give us those vaccines. When Government of India planned that vaccines will be given to the senior citizens first, and before even senior citizens, to corona warriors, the forces, the army, the nurses, the doctors, the Safai Karamcharis, the Raitus, when they will be given the vaccine first, these people were questioning that policy. When India gave vaccine to the senior citizens first, they were questioning, where are the vaccines for my children? Now can you imagine the kind of chaos which was sought to be created? Because if one had followed those policies, a lot of people would have died. For the simple reason, the most vulnerable class is the senior citizens. And if senior citizens could not be protected, no one else would have been protected, and there would have been many more deaths. So they were playing up with the lives of people when India needed all the political parties to come together and work for the nation's benefit, work for the people's benefit. But these people's mindset was completely different even at that point in time. On the other side, you had a leader like Pradhan Mantri, Mr. Modi, who sat down with the private agencies who had the capacity to produce vaccines, asked them that, can you produce this vaccine? They said, sir, it's too much of research which needs, and we don't have that kind of money to set up new units in which this vaccine can be produced. So Government of India gave 3,500 crore to each of those companies who promised to deliver, and the only condition was that till the Government of India requires vaccines, you cannot sell it in the open market. And Indian government will be your biggest buyer. We will be buying, you will have a captive production for us. And when the vaccine started to distribute, at that point in time, these people said it will take 20 years to vaccinate 1.2 billion doses. Government of India finished that task. Each one of us can sit and talk without mask because all of us are vaccinated. And the Prime Minister's vaccine is no different from the vaccine you and me have got, or our Safai Karamchari has got, or people at the bottom of the ladder have got, and all of us got our vaccine at the right time from a center close to where we could have got. Each one of us have e-certificates with us. You know, the most so-called rich countries, I wouldn't call them developed now, I'll say the most rich countries of the world do not have a digital certificate. Do you know the kind of chaos? They could not even handle the kind of workload we have. We got 2.2 billion doses for everyone, and at the right time. So managing that system, which was COVID, and when questions were raised about COVID, we said it's an open source system, anyone can take it from here. I'm sorry to have jumped from vaccination to straight away to digital infrastructure, but you will all understand the kind of capacity which was showcased by Government of India while handling pandemic, while handling the requirement for oxygen. And that showcasing was not just relevant, it was with the bhav, with the emotion of serving the people of this country who elected him, who made him the Prime Minister. And with that service, it also showcased the determination, it showcased the will, it showcased the resilience of this country, and that's what the Prime Minister embodies. Prime Minister is representing all the good things the country is representing today. We are all energized, we want changes, we are aspirational, we want work, we are connected to our roots, we want to progress ahead, we want to use technology, and that's what is being embodied by the office of the Prime Minister. The Prime Minister as a person embodies all these things and is leading from the front. He's leading from the front because when I talked about marginalized, I mean, imagine the kind of work which has been done for the most marginalized community, that is the women of this country. Nobody bothered how much weight a woman carries on her head while bringing fire, fuel for fire. Nobody bothered how much time she spends when there is no ration at home. Nobody understood that what kind of time and energy is wasted by a woman in fetching water so that the children can get cooked meal or bathing or for other requirements. But here is a government which is working directly, which is again leading from the front, and Prime Minister is overseeing these programs where issues which really touch the soul of women, which represent womanhood. I mean, womanhood cannot but be represented by a phase in life when children drop out of the school because of menstruation. Women get into difficulty because they are unable to function properly at that point in time. Prime Minister of the country talking about sanitary pads. Prime Minister of the country talking about sanitation facilities in this country. Yes, yesterday he said we built the Parliament House, but we also built 13 crore toilets. That is the strength on which this government has worked. That wherever the pain existed, wherever difficulty existed, those difficulties got addressed, those difficulties were made easy. Life was made easy, whether it is Ujjwala Yojana, it is Jandan Khatas. I'll come to Jandan Khata later when I talk about financial inclusion. But Har Ghar Nal Se Jal, Ayushman Yojana, which the CM has already spoken about, so many aspects, sanitary pads, toilets, Har Ghar Nal Se Jal, these are issues which were not even addressed for a common woman. And because of this, she was getting health issues, she was getting into health problems. When the woman of the house is suffering, everybody in the society suffers. Children, husband, in-laws, parents, everybody is suffering. When the focal point, the woman of the family suffers, everyone suffers. So he tried to address. I mean, let's not forget, he's a person who came from very impoverished and poor background. He would have seen these things with his own eyes when his mother must have been suffering. And he would have developed that emotion to address these issues, that these are the things which got to be addressed. These are the things which need to be spoken about. And you see a result of a true sensitivity towards the cause. And that sensitivity is reflected by the work done. That sensitivity is reflected by the speed with which the work gets done. And if I talk about the next slide, let's move to the next. Medical treatment we've already spoken about. So, poor. Here I will say everybody talked about Garibi Hatao. Ever since I've been born, I've been listening to this word, and I'm above 50. For that many years, Garibi Hatao. So for that many years, Garibi Hatao program was going on, and the Garibi was not, we were not able to get rid of Garibi. What we were getting in return is more Garib, and what we were getting is more corruption. Because all the money that was meant for the poor was going into some people's pocket. It never reached the last person which had to be connected, which had to get that benefit. So government sending money and money is not reaching. We talked about financial inclusion, but there was no inclusion. We talked about reaching doorstep delivery, but it was not happening. You know, within 4 months, initial year when he took over as a Prime Minister, he came up with this Jandan Yojana, Jandan bank accounts, and everyone, you can go back, check the reports, your own teams would have covered the opposition, and they said, you're burdening the banks because these people have no money. What are these accounts worthy of? And this is the most useless scheme which Government of India is bringing, which Prime Minister is bringing. Remember that time, as you remember about COVID, because it happened in recent past. Look at the negativity. Every time a good thing gets done, the amount of negativity which is poured into it. Lack of understanding, lack of vision is all I can think of. At that point in time when these bank accounts were opened, this was actually for social and financial inclusion. Imagine 70 years of India's independence, and this country with 100 crore plus population only had close to 12 crore bank accounts. Can you imagine? 12 crore bank accounts for 100 crore people. This was the state. And more than 100 crore people were there. And there would have been families which would have got more than 5 accounts, 10 accounts just in one family. So not even 10 crore people had the bank accounts. At that point in time, it was decided to open the bank accounts even for those who do not have money to put, but bank account be opened so that they get access to banking facility. And you see, even in terms of GDP, when you look at this figure, more than 50%, 60%, I must say, of our GDP comes from unorganized sector. And those people who are working in the unorganized sector had no access to the organized money, which is government money, or public money's access was not available to those people. You know, a street vendor, a person selling mangoes, a person selling flowers, a person selling vegetables, a person running a tea stall, a woman selling papad, they had no access. So this financial inclusion, Jan Dhan Khata, was the biggest financial inclusion that could have happened anywhere in any country across the globe. And with these bank accounts, you give them access to public funding, you gave them access to financing, you gave them dignity, you brought in the money earned by them into the banking facility. Because they had the money, but they didn't know what to do with it. They could not enter banking system, but he brought them to the banks. And here were the bank officers who were going to them to open the bank accounts, giving them that sense of pride and dignity which is so much needed. And with that money, they got insurance, they got health benefits, they got easy loans, they could run their businesses, and then Government of India also got the record how much money is needed by whom. So Startup India, Stand Up India, Mudra Yojana, all these programs could be run because of one act of Jan Dhan Khata, which was initial scheme brought in. And that is the vision which this Prime Minister carried with himself when he took on as the Prime Minister. And you see the result in over 9 years. This has been a government which is there to serve the community, which is there to serve the people, reaching out to the unreached, talking about, not just talking about marginalized people, but working for the marginalized people and removing those impediments which are there and which are impeding a person's growth. Eliminating corruption. And that was the biggest thing that happened, eliminating corruption. Gati Shakti, the Prime Minister has already talked about Gati Shakti, CM has also talked about. So I must say, Gati Shakti, there are various verticals. And we've all seen that whenever any act of infrastructure is going on, how a road has to meet a railway station, how railway station needs to be connected with the port, how port needs to be connected with an airport, where the markets are going to be, where the locality is going to be, how many people are going to get impacted, where electricity will flow, where the transmission line for internet will come, where the water supply is going to come from. So many things need to be planned. And Prime Minister's Gati Shakti program is all about all those verticals. So no developmental activity needs to be seen in isolation. There has to be a bracket in which everything else needs to follow. And this program is one of its kind where you can see the speed with which we are working, where logistic chain management can be better, and this can lead to the economic well-being of all of us and working at a certain speed. I mean, I'm sorry, but since I'm in a city of Bangalore, I can only give the example of Bangalore. So many issues from past are pending, including one flyover, corrupt practices, account given to someone, contract given to someone, not completed, etc., etc. I'm not going into the detail because it's a non-political press today. But I must say, how many lanes highway? Mysore? 10 lane. 10 lane highway, Bangalore-Mysore, which was long desired by the people of the state, got completed in a record time. Yeah? This indicates corruption-free governance. This is indicative of the speed with which monitoring and good governance, because good governance is also about not just handing over projects. Good governance is also about monitoring projects. Can you imagine India today has constructed more than 4 lakh kilometer worth of roads? Can you imagine, I mean, for a common parlance I can say, without going into the record numbers, that 1.5 times the circumference of the earth is the length of the road which has been built over these years, in 8-9 years. When we came in 2014, you know, the highway construction had reduced to some 4.5 kilometer and some say 12 kilometer. There were probably different statistics for different areas. The area I come from, up north, it was pretty less, but on an average, even if it was 12 kilometer a year, per day, 12 kilometer per day, today it has gone up by 40 kilometers per day. 40 kilometers a day. So many people who were left without water. Today, more than 13 crore people, 13 crore homes have got water, including places like Rajasthan. Drought-prone areas, the rural Janta which never had water, water at the height of Himachal and Arunachal. That is the kind of work which is going on right now in water supply management. And water, of course, I related the water to the need of the women, because most women are fetching water for their family. Not taking off that pot of water from the head, which we call ghada on our side. I don't know what's called in Kannadiga, but sar se ghada hatane ka kaam Pradhan Mantri ko karna pada. Can you imagine the kind of weight women were carrying over their heads to meet the drudgery they were going through to meet the requirements of the family, and nobody bothered? Nobody was interested even in addressing these issues. And this is to do with your infrastructure development, that when you are dealing with the development or development of an area, you will talk about canals, you'll talk about water management system. In fact, I must say on water management, I met someone on the way today, this morning on the flight, and he said, you know, the country is going to face a huge crisis, and that's going to be water. And we will probably have to import water from outside this country, from countries like Canada, and export people from here because we have such a large population. I said, I must tell you something, that to conserve water, when India completed its 75th year of independence, Prime Minister announced Azadi Ka Amrit Mahotsav, and there were all kind of suggestions that how do you celebrate 75 years of independence, and you send a satellite, etc., etc. And Prime Minister, I still remember that conversation, where he said, you know, these are not the things which I'm interested, these are PR exercises, we need something solid to be done for the people. And the plan was to build 75,000 ponds across the country, so that, which is called Amrit Sarovar, so that these reservoirs of water recharge the earth. These reservoirs become the storage space for water, marine life to life in the water, to every other life can be protected, human life of course can be protected, plants, animals, and there is enough water for the people. I must say, on conservation, on environmental conservation, on wildlife conservation, we saw cheetahs and highest number of animals which have gone into the highest number of wildlife animals which have happened in recent past. This is a country which is a country of yuva, of youth, because we have more than 60% young people in this country. And even at this point in time, whether it's sports, the very best kind of performance, still a long way to go, is happened because podium target program was run by the government. So many facilities across the country have been created in sporting sector, new education policy, to Startup India, funds being made available for starting other such activities. for women also in the startup sector, information technology, the cheapest rate for internet and highest consumption and highest density is what you see in these years, and connectivity. I mean, there is so much to say, there is so much to showcase, that even in the field of youth and infrastructure has been done. A bit quick. So this is I'll stop here. Virasat or Vikas, and that's where I started from. That while India will make progress, India will get ahead in technology, be it digital, be it infrastructure, be it anything, but we are also going to preserve our heritage and culture, and that's an example of our heritage and culture preservation, whether it's Kartarpur corridor, so on and so forth. Ram Mandir on our anvil. Could you imagine that Ram Mandir will happen? Did you imagine? I mean, I'm asking my friends on the dais. No. And again, I remember I also did not imagine that Ram Mandir could actually happen and we will actually get Ram Mandir. I thought this will only be, battle and fights over it. The courts and outside the court, communities will have all kinds of opinion. But the civilization of this country, the ethical values which Ram represents, the concept of Ram, not just as a person but as civilizational icon, is what this temple represents. And whenever we talk about governance, we always talk about Ram Rajya. Ram Rajya because where everybody has a space. So it's a secular state with the values of Ram. And Ram needed to be given its due place, which this civilization was denying for such a long time, and has seen such a long history of skirmishes about it. But Ram Mandir is on the anvil and is happening. Expanding connectivity, I should just talk about bridges. I mean, Bogeybill Bridge in Northeast, to which is pending for ages, forever. And no connectivity with Northeast, nobody worked for it, people were getting exploited, all kinds of their rights as civilizations were getting impeded, as people, as communities were getting impeded, but no conversation about development. But not just talk about Northeast, he transferred it to not just look east, but work towards east, and work with entire force towards development of Northeast. Security, whether it's technology, whether it's number of people, whether giving permanent commission to women in the army, whether it's giving asking every other state and bringing certain percentage, 25% women, 15%, gradually increasing that number of women in the paramilitary forces, abolishing 370. I mean, the Ram Mandir and 370 were things like I thought I will probably die without seeing this happen in front of my eyes. But that happened because it's directly related to the safety and security of our country. And G20 that happened recently at Srinagar showcased the strength of this country, and that's what this government has showcased, its determination to bring that change which was asked for by the country for a very, very long time. So it was not just a promise, but it was delivery of a promise that happened. Now, whether it's Yemen, Syria, Nepal, Ukraine, recently Afghanistan, and just now Sudan, so on and so forth. Every time there is a crisis and you happen to be an Indian in a foreign land, you know there is a place to go to, and there is a person who will be there to respond, and that's what the change in working has happened ever since PM became the Prime Minister of this country. That the government of India will respond to the need of its people no matter where they are. And that response will be in terms of what is required and what is asked of as a government. These are the changes in attitude, in conduct, and in reaching out to the unreached again. Even in foreign countries, we engaged in these rescue missions. I must say, whether it's G20, it's SCO presidency, or the visits of the Prime Minister outside the country, all of them have added a feather in the cap of India, because we get to benefit. The moment India gets to be, the stature of India goes up by Prime Minister's conversation, by his presence, by eulogy that people have to offer him outside the country, whether it's investment coming into this country, or it's a sense of security for Indians outside, or sense of pride also, or it's about reaching out, or it's about getting help from others when we are in difficulty, which happened during COVID. It's all adds up to the benefit of the people of our country. Every visit of the Prime Minister, every accolade that Prime Minister receives is an accolade to the 1.3 strong billion Indians. It's for all of us. That compliment is meant to for all of us as a country, as people, and that's what he's added value to the presence across the globe, and thus recognized as a global leader, and people asking him, taking him on board for various programs and various things, and geostrategic issues which got to be discussed by various groups across the globe, and thus pride of India and the status of India goes up with a Prime Minister like Prime Minister Modi, who's traveling across the globe. I would say what we saw yesterday at the inauguration of the new parliament, my heart, and I'm speaking on everybody else's behalf, was filled with the sense of pride. Each one of us felt so proud that we don't need foreign architects to come and tell us what architecture is. We can use the latest technology without any intervention from anyone. It's all desi, it's all made in India. Every material used in the parliament came from various parts of the country. Various artists from across the country have contributed, which showcase all the best things India has to offer, both culturally, technologically, architecturally, and also historically, and from the perspective of heritage, because India is, as said, the mother of democracy. People forgot, people started talking about Westphalian models and so on and so forth. From Vedic period, this country had the system of democracy where Raja, was just a title like Prime Minister. He would be one person who will be elected by others, and Raj Dand is something which would be used at the time of Rajyabhishek. His forehead will be touched by this or hit by the, because when king will say, I am the most superior and I can do whatever, the Raj Purohit will touch his forehead and hit him with a baton, saying, and that is Raj Dand, saying, you are not the greatest, it's the law of the land which is superior to you, and you are here to obey the land, the laws of the land, and also uphold the dharma. Dharma not in a narrow sense as we use these days, because that time there was no Christianity and there was no Islam. These are the practices which precede the origin of these religion, and these practices were to keep the society gentle, compassionate, and even the most powerful man was not powerful in front of the law. It was the law of the land which was the most superior, most powerful, and that is the soul of democracy. That is what rule of law represents, which of course we get from post-Renaissance period, and that is what was represented when that Singhol was kept, which was neglected for 75 years, was kept right next to the speaker's chair. So this is heritage, culture, technology, development all together, and that's the way forward for India, and that's the vision of the Prime Minister, and that's the work which was Bhagirathi Prayas, which we have done over 9 years.
If you had 1 crore